Are you building wealth or just a golden prison? Most financially successful people I know are trapped in a destructive mindset that transforms money into a new form of misery. What they don't realize, and perhaps you don't either, is that true financial success doesn't come from following formulas, but from a revolution in how you think. The richest people in the world don't have a wealth plan. They have an experimental mindset. I know this trap well because I've been in it. Chasing that next financial goal, that next investment, that next income level, and still feeling empty inside. The uncomfortable truth is that 78% of people who reach their financial goals remain unsatisfied. Not because the money didn't arrive, but because their mindset never changed. The real problem isn't a lack of financial strategies. The market is saturated with them. The problem is that we're operating with destructive mindsets that sabotage our relationship with money and prevent us from experiencing true prosperity, one that goes far beyond our bank balance. Look around you. How many people do you know who make good money but still live in constant anxiety? How many successful business people have sacrificed their health, relationships, and joy in pursuit of wealth? How many retirees have reached their number but feel completely lost? This is the financial paradox of our time. We've never had more information about building wealth, yet we've never been more mentally trapped by it. The philosopher William James once said, "The greatest revolution of our generation is the discovery that human beings, by changing the inner attitudes of their minds, can change the outer aspects of their lives." This is the philosophical lens that will cut through the illusion keeping so many of us trapped. It's not your financial strategies that determine your destiny, but your willingness to experiment. True millionaires aren't those who follow formulas. They are natural experimenters. Ancient Stoics understood this well. Seneca, despite being one of the wealthiest men in Rome, advised, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." The Stoics practiced what they called voluntary discomfort, essentially running life experiments to test their assumptions and break free from unconscious patterns. The wealthiest minds throughout history weren't rigid followers. They were relentless experimenters. There are 3 destructive mindsets silently sabotaging your path to true prosperity. The cynical mindset. This is the "why bother" mentality. You've lost curiosity about money and ambitious financial goals. You might doom scroll financial news, complain about the economy, or make fun of naive people who still believe they can build wealth. You've convinced yourself that the system is rigged, so why try? The financial damage. This mindset keeps you in survival mode, making reactive financial decisions based on fear rather than opportunity. A study from the Financial Planning Association found that cynical investors underperform the market by an average of 7.2% annually because they're too skeptical to stay invested in promising opportunities. The surprising shift. What if your cynicism isn't wisdom, but just a protective shell against the discomfort of uncertainty? True financial wisdom requires both skepticism and curiosity. The Escapist Mindset. This is when you're curious about money, perhaps consuming lots of financial content, but have abandoned real ambition. You dream about financial freedom while avoiding the necessary actions. You might compulsively check investment apps without making meaningful changes, engage in retail therapy, or fantasize about winning the lottery. The financial damage. Escapism creates the illusion of financial progress without the substance. The average American spends 5 hours weekly consuming financial content, but only 23 minutes actively managing their money. This gap between knowledge and action is the most expensive gap in your financial life. The surprising shift: what if all that financial content you consume is actually keeping you from building real wealth? True wealth builders spend less time learning and more time experimenting. The Perfectionist Mindset. This is the toxic productivity approach to wealth. You're highly ambitious but have sacrificed curiosity in pursuit of your financial goals. You follow strict systems, overwork yourself, and believe that once you reach a certain financial number, you'll finally be happy. Your self-worth is tied to your net worth. The financial damage. Perfectionism creates wealth at the cost of well-being. A Harvard Business School study found that 68% of high net worth individuals who built wealth through perfectionist approaches reported significant regrets about sacrifices made along the way. A surprising shift. What if your rigid financial plans are actually limiting your wealth potential? The most successful investors are not the most disciplined. They're the most adaptable. The alternative to these destructive mindsets is what neuroscientist Anne-Laure Lecounf calls the experimental mindset, a combination of high curiosity and high ambition. This is the hidden operating system of true wealth builders. When you develop an experimental mindset about money, you see failures as data points. Instead of being devastated by a bad investment or business setback, you ask, what can I learn from this? The average millionaire has failed at 3.2 businesses before finding their successful formula. You question financial assumptions. Rather than blindly following conventional wisdom about saving 10% or the 4% retirement rule, you run personal experiments to discover what actually works for your financial life. You embrace financial uncertainty. Instead of needing to know exactly how your wealth will grow, you design small experiments to test different approaches, knowing that adaptation is more powerful than prediction. Here's what makes this mindset revolutionary. It's based on the scientific method, not wishful thinking. Scientists don't expect every experiment to succeed. They expect to learn from each one. This is precisely how Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio, and other financial titans think about money. They're not following a rigid plan. They're running constant experiments. The most fascinating neuroscience research shows that when we experience uncertainty as an experiment rather than a threat, we activate completely different neural pathways, ones associated with creativity and learning, rather than stress and protection. Your brain on experiments is literally wired for wealth. So how do you shift from destructive mindsets to the experimental mindset? You start by designing what Lecounf calls a pact, a small, time-bound experiment to test your financial assumptions. Unlike habits or goals which can feel overwhelming, a financial pact has 4 key qualities. Purposeful. It tests something you genuinely care about in your financial life. Actionable. You can start immediately without special resources. Continuous. You do it regularly for a set period. Trackable. You can easily see if you did it or not. Yes, no. Let me show you how this works with 3 powerful financial experiments you can run. Experiment number 1, the Money Awareness Pact. Instead of vaguely trying to spend less, commit to tracking every dollar for 30 days without judgment. Don't change anything yet, just observe. This simple experiment often reveals spending patterns you never noticed before. One client discovered he was spending $780 monthly on subscriptions he rarely used, a finding that translated to an extra $9,360 yearly for investments simply through awareness. Experiment number 2, the Income Laboratory Pact. Instead of endlessly researching side hustles, commit to testing one additional income stream for 60 days. Whether it's selling a service, creating digital content, or monetizing a skill, commit to the experiment regardless of initial results. The key shift: you're not committing to a lifetime business. You're just collecting data. This releases the pressure that causes most people to quit before they discover what works. Experiment number 3, the Investment Belief Pact. Choose one investing belief you hold, like real estate is the best investment, or I need to check my portfolio daily. can deliberately test the opposite approach for 90 days. If you believe active trading is necessary, experiment with a passive approach. If you've always avoided certain asset classes, experiment with a small allocation. The goal isn't to be right, but to expand your financial possibilities. What makes these experiments powerful isn't their complexity, but their intentionality. You're no longer operating on financial autopilot. You're consciously designing your relationship with money. The true power of the experimental mindset emerges when you analyze your results. After completing a financial experiment, you need to look at both external and internal data. External data measures traditional financial metrics. Did your net worth increase? Did you save more money? Did your investments perform well? Internal data measures your personal experience. Did this approach energize or drain you? Did it align with your values? Did it enhance or diminish your overall life quality? Most people only focus on external data, which is why so many successful people are miserable. True wealth requires alignment between external success and internal fulfillment. Let me share a personal example. Several years ago, I ran an experiment to test a popular wealth-building strategy, aggressively flipping real estate properties. The external data after 6 months looked promising. I was on track to make substantial profits. But the internal data told a different story. I was constantly stressed, losing sleep, and missing important family events. When I analyzed both data sets together, I made a counterintuitive decision. I stopped flipping properties despite its profitability. Instead, I designed a new experiment with long-term rental properties that generated less immediate income, but created more life balance. This decision initially looked financially inferior on paper, but over 5 years it actually produced greater wealth because I could sustain and scale it without burnout. This is the experimental advantage. You optimize for sustainable wealth, not just maximum short-term returns. After completing a financial experiment, you have 3 options. Persist with the approach if both external and internal data are positive. Pivot by making adjustments if the concept is promising but needs refinement. Pause and move on if the experiment clearly doesn't work for you. Remember, there's no failure in experimentation, only data. Even discovering what doesn't work for you is valuable information that most people spend decades never acquiring. We began this conversation by identifying the mindset trap that keeps most people financially restricted, despite having access to endless financial strategies. Now, you understand that the path to true wealth isn't about finding the perfect plan. It's about developing an experimental mindset that continually tests and refines your approach to money. The wealthy don't just think differently about money, they think differently about thinking itself. They see uncertainty not as something to fear, but as a laboratory for growth. Ask yourself, which destructive mindset has been dominating your financial life? Have you been cynical, escapist, or perfectionist with your money? And what small experiment could you design today to begin shifting toward a more curious, ambitious relationship with wealth? The philosopher Montaigne said, "The great and glorious masterpiece of man is to know how to live with purpose." I would add that the masterpiece of wealth building is to experiment with purpose. Your financial transformation begins not with a better strategy, but with a better relationship to uncertainty. When you embrace financial experimentation, you don't just change your results, you change who you become in the process. And ultimately, that's what this channel is about. We believe that before you can have millions, you must think like a millionaire. And millionaires are, above all else, masterful experimenters. If this perspective on wealth building resonates with you, I'm curious. Which of the 3 destructive mindsets do you recognize in your own financial life? Leave a comment below sharing which one you're working to overcome and what experiment you might design to shift your approach. And if you're committed to developing not just a wealthier bank account, but a wealthier mind, hit subscribe to join our community of experimental thinkers. Each week, we explore another mental shift that separates those who merely chase wealth from those who actually create it. As always, if you received value from today's video, that like button is your way of running a small experiment with the YouTube algorithm to help more people discover these ideas. Until next time, remember, your wealth begins not with what you know, but with how willing you are to experiment.